Scene one, take one, Mark.
And action. Hey everybody, how you doing? It's Friday, 2 o'clock. Here we are at Burnie's Applebox, and today we got a great guest. Long time, very good friend, very smart guy. Maybe one of the smartest guys I know, but then how would I know?
Thank you.
So Pete Deutschman. Pete, thank you, buddy.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming on.
Good to be here, Burnie.
Pete owns the Buddy Group, and I have known Pete probably close to 10 years, I guess.
That's
now.
right, yeah.
10 years, and Pete is a marketer, and one of the smartest guys I know, and somebody who delved in long ago into the video realm just after YouTube started, and Pete was putting video on websites, which everybody swore up and down to me couldn't be done, but you did it. And also Pete has an incredible wealth of marketing knowledge, and also something that I am always fascinated in talking to him, and we're in the same building right here as Applebox Network, is he always can see around the corner in what's coming in marketing and the future. So we're going to talk about that today, and we're going to have a great time. Thanks again,
Absolutely,
Pete, for
buddy.
coming.
Good to be here.
Oh,
I'm thrilled that you're doing this, by the way.
I really appreciate you've been so supportive, Pete, and Pete has supported the Applebox Network, Burnie's Applebox, all the way through. And this is really sort of, I know even from years back talking, this is an idea that we've both thought is a great idea. We've both seen this is the way of it coming. And of course, there's been starts and stops along the way. But,
Sure.
but your support, this would not have happened without your support. So thank you, Pete.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You've honed in on this idea that what I believe is necessary in order to create quality content is you have to understand your audience, and you've created this community. And in fact, the ability to distribute that content on the community, Facebook as its main primary driver, and obviously have other distribution channels as well. It's the modern mechanism for distribution, and the ability for you to be able to do this here in our building is pretty exciting.
It's amazing to me, and I know how long we've talked about, this is possible, that's possible, and of course, we have more ideas than the technology can catch up with
We haven't
right
scratched
now.
the surface. That's right.
So, first of all, the Buddy Group, which is tell us what it is.
So the Buddy Group is a modern marketing agency. We are evolving what it means to be an agency every single day. And that happens as a result of the continued evolution of technology. But at its core, we help brands be the exception. And be the exception on the channels that matter to them, which is often overlooked when developing a brand message. We often think that it's one size fits all. The reality is that there's specific channels and just points of distribution and relationships with your customers that really matter. And so we, leveraging technology and understanding of brand messaging and obviously content, as the case of our building here, have the ability to help tell those stories appropriately.
Right, that's great. Give me kind of an idea too, and a little bit, what scares brands the most today?
Well, I think that there's a lot of things that scare brands, and it mostly has to do with the fact that they feel as though they can't afford to do things the way they want to do. So what they end up doing is they go with the MVP model a lot of times, not realizing that ultimately it's going to cost them more. I think what scares them is actually the thing that they should be embracing. They have to think like a startup, even if they're not a startup.
Right.
A lot of our clients, are mid to large size companies. But we bring the experience of working in the startup worlds to them in a lot of ways, and enforce the conversation around being more nimble, about trial and error. We have a philosophy around how we produce the strategies. It's called REAL. And we can talk more about that, but effectively it has a lot to do with the ability to listen to your audience and be relatable to your audience, educate your audience, and then create advocacy around that. Ultimately, it's an acronym, REAL, And that in itself is something that I believe that a lot of brands are scared to admit that they don't know. So where they go is they go to the low-hanging fruit, which is the new shiny object in the world of technology,
Right.
marketing automation, artificial intelligence, as a means of trying to find the silver bullet. And don't get me wrong, there's tons of value of having
Absolutely.
automation and leveraging that technology. But you can't go there. You can't be artificial until you
Right.
know how to be real.
Right. Okay. Very
And
good.
so it's kind of having them take a step back. So what they're really scared of today is, I think, just the idea that they don't know what they don't know,
Right.
and they jump into the deep end thinking that they should be solving a problem with some new platform or technology,
Right.
without an understanding of themselves enough to be able to get there.
What that core is, right?
Right.
Their core relationship to the
Sure.
client, to their user,
To their customer user.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. The user experience.
You know, I have a lot of empathy for a brand, somebody at a company who is, maybe in charge of marketing or going out there. I know the way that the technology and the amount of change and the speed of the change has affected us. And I'm on set a lot of times.
Right.
You're out there selling the set, if you will. You're
Right.
selling the creative ideas
Sure.
that get made. But think about what it's like for them. I mean, to be in that sort of, Mike Kirsch and I came up with a term called the media abyss. And that is what we were trying to explain with that, is that somebody just looking at it, you go 10 years ago, well, YouTube was what, 3 years old then?
Sure.
Facebook was maybe, another 3 years old or 2 years old, something like that. But you start out then and thinking like, geez, that was just 10 years ago. The fundamental change that has happened here for marketers is incredible. And I know that you are someone who is really focusing on that. I think a lot of other people are still into the and here's what I call it. It's the old school. The old school is make a product, make a video.
Yep.
And that's supposed to do it. And I truly believe that where you're at and where you're coming from, what my belief is you need to be in contact with that person
Yep.
all the time. You need to make them, they need to be comfortable with you.
There's a lot to that. First of all, shout out to Mike Kirsch.
Yeah.
He's
We both love
mutual
Mike Kirsch.
mutual
Yeah.
friend and somebody I admire as a content creator. And he was at the very beginning of the Buddy Group there in the trenches with us, trying to figure out how to do things, right?
Yeah.
The original vision of the Buddy Group was that of a digital content creative agency. And this idea didn't exist at the time. And I bring it up because I think it's parallel path to the evolution of our marketplace. You had video production companies in the traditional sense,
Yes.
right? Who were often hired by a media or an advertising agency to execute against a storyboard or a concept, right? You had a media agency who was buying the media and trying to stay current with the new forms of digital media. In that, very early days, we were talking about interactive banner ads, and we had flash banners and
Right.
GIF banners, right?
Right.
And the way in which that content was being created was often an afterthought, where the video production company was going out and shooting something or product photography. The website was being created, maybe. And then ultimately, those assets were handed off to a digital interactive firm to produce something. But there wasn't somebody in between who was forcing themselves at the table very early on to have a conversation with the media company, to have a conversation with the advertising or marketing agency. And so we inserted ourselves into that conversation, really saying, hey, if we can help you show what's possible, maybe we can help shape and be more efficient, but also shape a better, more interactive experience.
Right.
And the thing that had us excited about then is actually the same thing that has us excited now. It's just changed, and that is the idea that the nonlinear storytelling model, the ability to personalize content is pretty significant. The opportunity is pretty significant. It's just that the technology over the years, and technology being accessibility and distribution, has changed so dramatically at such a rapid pace that we've continued to have to pivot and shift to adapt to the ways in which that all has manifested. So early on, as a digital creative agency, we were producing assets for either inline banner ads through Flash interactivity, but also if you wanted to embed content into a website, you created Flash websites.
Right.
And by nature of having Flash, which was still in the browser, but having this ultimately Adobe Flash interactive experience, it provided an opportunity for a brand to have a true nonlinear experience should they want to, put overlays of content pulled in from content management systems, et cetera. And the way this manifested, of course, for the customer was that of an interactive experience. And in fact, on this stage, we would have a host walk out onto the screen, right? And we'd have that to be able to go full screen. You could have interactivity on there, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
And this was creatively just awesome.
Yeah.
Right? You could walk into a room and create a vision for something and bring it to life in Flash, from interactive games, the dynamic content, and everything in between. Then this thing comes around.
Right, the disruptor.
Right? And it's now the thing that disrupted and the thing that killed those interactive experiences is also the thing that has made our industry it's the glimmer of hope for our industry at the same time, and we can talk more about that. The evolution of the idea that content now needed to live in a player without interactivity, because Apple basically came right out and said, like, screw you, Adobe.
Flash is dead.
We're not going to support this anymore.
Yeah.
And you had some devices who said, we're going to support you,
Battled
Adobe,
on. Yeah.
and they're gone.
Yep.
So it wasn't until, that basically transformed our business.
Yes.
In the case of content and in the case of interactive, where we were creating these more simplistic websites with embedded videos. The proliferation of YouTube was happening parallel to that, because now we had an opportunity to have a distribution system whereby YouTube was responsible for determining what device you had and ensuring that you could see the content. Each individual publisher or brand didn't have to worry about that.
Right.
So cost to distribute content came down, but the interactivity, the smartness of it really went away.
Oh, it did.
There was a period in time where YouTube came out with some interactive video elements built in, but because of the size and scale of YouTube, it was very limited to what you could do.
Okay.
And still, in order to work on your mobile device, it had to be, your video had to be sucked into the the Apple experience, and so QuickTime, and so we didn't end up seeing a proliferation of that nonlinear experience on mobile.
So tell me, what was it like during that time? Because I feel like you were kind of the ground forces out there, right? Talking to brands, and giving them that exciting story about what could be done. What was it like for you as a business owner, as a marketing company owner, when this was all happening?
Well, the conversation shifted from quality interactive experiences that helped educate your audience on your own channels, where people were promoting their own channels, to this recognition now that, wait a minute, Google is the #1 search engine, YouTube being owned by Google, the #2. Maybe I should have more content up on YouTube and make it accessible for all.
Right.
So this idea of more content and the idea that I could host it for free became really interesting. So the conversation shift to quantity. Therein lied opportunities for strategy to determine what content we should be creating. Started talking about our audiences. Was it relevant to be producing content on this channel, and how are we driving traffic to it? Obviously, we started seeing advertising formats come out around video, which created new revenue channels and opportunity. And it was and still is very exciting. The difference between then and now is who is producing the content. When we started, and I think you and I both feel this, is that when we started our businesses, the idea that I was going to send the strategy and the content production to a partner, because that's not our business.
Right.
Right. That's not our business. We don't do that.
Yes.
we are in the business of producing a widget. We're in the producing a loaf of bread. We are in the business of producing cars, but we don't produce content.
Right.
And the difference now is the importance of telling the right story to the right person at the right time is widely known. And so the recognition now is that we should be doing as much as we can of that ourselves. Why? Not because the quality necessarily is going to be exponentially better. Most brands will say, we want to work with subject matter experts who do this all day for other brands because we're going to glean a lot more from that.
Sure, absolutely.
But they understand the speed to create that content is just as important as the quality and the quantity. And the theory was that having people in-house would provide me an opportunity to produce that content at scale at a much more rapid pace. And in some businesses that works, where you can have a mid-level content creator producing, product photography, product videos, kind of mid-level content at scale. Doesn't need high quality brand. It just needs to be block and tackle. It's the type of thing that may be included on your YouTube channel for how-tos, or maybe included on your website, as part of your customer experience.
Right.
But the science behind upper funnel marketing content is something that is often lacking within an internal organization. Why? Because the technology continues to change.
Right.
And if you're not doing it every single day,
right. And
you're a dinosaur.
Hire the person who knows this. 6 months later, it's this.
Well, and I use this analogy that I actually I heard it from a friend of mine. The days of having an agency who is a cruise ship, right? The cruise ship analogy, a giant cruise ship, everything's on one boat.
You got 6 restaurants on there, the hamburger bar, and pizza bar.
Exactly. Those are gone.
Yeah.
Right? We don't have that. Now in a business of speedboats. So the question is, what kind of speedboat are you going to be? And if you've built a relationship with that mindset of a speedboat with your customer, with the brand, as an agency, as a content producer, you build that trust. And ultimately, you want to know that there are other speedboats in our network that think and act just like us, that we are going to work together with to execute against whatever that next challenge you might be.
And those other speedboats know your model, too. When they come over to your fleet, they're operating under your command.
That's right.
If you will.
Yes. Exactly. And so that's the evolution, I think, of the marketing space.
Yes. So you've essentially gone from big, where you did it all in-house, now to using those components as you need them.
That's right.
And I think that you're the example as opposed to the exception, right? You see other companies going this way, don't you? Or?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Everybody in the category right now, and you see it every day in the trades. If you're in the industry, in the marketing industry, you're seeing that a lot of ad agencies and a lot of marketing agencies are going to a model of more of a consultancy. And you're seeing the consultants starting to look at what we are doing today and saying we should be becoming more like that.
Yes.
Right? So this sort of, everybody's kind of pointing in that right direction.
Going in the right swing.
Of saying, hey, if we can think strategically and understand the audience, and create and leverage the best of breed tools and be more like an architect or a general contractor, but we don't need to have the masonry person, on staff, because the mason job happens once a month, not every week.
Not exactly.
Doesn't mean that person who's doing the masonry job isn't highly skilled, isn't worthy of every dime they charge,
and in demand,
and likely busy.
Yes.
All 52 weeks out of the year.
Yes.
But for a particular client,
right,
they don't need to pay for that resource sitting in your agency.
The other 3 weeks that they're not busy.
That's right.
Just to follow along with that analogy, because this is my favorite analogy of my business. When somebody goes, "Oh, you're in film and video. What do you do?" Oh, I go, "I'm a gaffer. I do I'm involved with executing the lighting, and I have a rental business where I rent the production." They always go, "Oh, that is so cool." I go, "Yeah, it's just like owning a backhoe. A builder, construction super, is going to build a house. What's the first thing they need to do? They need to dig the ditch.
Right.
They need to dig the hole.
Right.
That's what the backhoe does. He comes in, he pulls up, he finishes it. That hole is the last time he sees that house, you know, and it's the same with me on a set. I light the set, I do it, I look at the monitor, okay, we're ready to go. Boom, they shoot the scene. Now, once that's done, I'm all done,
Right.
you know, and somebody takes that and builds the piece. So I think the analogy is dead on. But also what I'd like to ask you is, because you've had employees for a long time, then there's the shift. And what I'm getting at is, I think the model is following a model of production. Production, as you know, brings in all the talent and who they need at the time, makes the content, and then they all go away to their other jobs, their freelance jobs, and the producer, director finish it off and deliver it to the client. What would you tell somebody who wants to be a marketing professional now about this environment, say if they're coming out of college or something like that? What advice would you have for them?
Boy,
I only ask easy questions.
yeah, that's a tough one. Follow your passion first, because if you follow what you're truly passionate about in the spectrum of marketing, then you'll continue to find success.
Yeah.
For me, I got my start in content, right? So, from undergrad in doing theater, I was producing and doing events, right? That's really what theater is.
Sure.
Right? A lot of times you have to understand the audience, and I'm not going to put up a show in a location that makes no sense.
Right.
Right. It goes back to the old vaudeville days, right? So you learn about this stuff in school, where you have producers who were trying to take things on tour very early on, thinking, well, if this works in New York, it's going to work in Des Moines, Iowa, and I'm going to go take this show on the road.
Yeah.
And you bring the show into Des Moines, Iowa, and you have crickets, and then night number 2 is completely empty, and next thing you know, you've lost everything.
Yeah.
Know your audience.
Right.
That's marketing at the end of the day.
Sure.
It's understanding your audience. So for me, I started realizing that I was really passionate about digging deeper into audiences, digging deeper into the data and the insights behind that, into the psychological side of what makes people smile, laugh, and engage. What's going to make people want to walk out of that theater in that regard, go to the corner, and tell a buddy to go see something.
You better see this.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that brought me, from a passion perspective, brought me to New York, it brought me to grad school to pursue the idea of commercial production. And from film and theater and the legal side and the business side, I mean, I explored all angles and worked professionally in that regard with a slant on marketing. And then when I started working professionally after graduate school, I found technology was always part of what I did. I loved it.
Yeah.
My graduate thesis project was a technology business, it was a .com business model for ticket distribution and live events. I was drawn back to LA from New York out of passion to see if I could work in the entertainment space, and had some great opportunities over the years to work on feature film releases and DVD releases when we had DVD releases, worked with celebrities, and ultimately learned bits and pieces of all of the technology and the marketing along the way that fueled this overall passion for what I have. So my advice always to somebody is to say, start with what you're passionate about. And if you're not entirely sure, don't just sit on the sidelines.
Right.
Jump in.
Yes.
Because you're gonna have 2 to 4 jobs in your first 4 years out of school.
Oh, at least.
Right?
Sure.
And that was the best advice. A gentleman by the name of Ed Sandler, who was one of my mentors when I was in graduate school from the Broadway League. He told me that while I was working for him. He said, you're going to have many jobs after you're done with school, and that's okay. It's totally normal. And it's not because you're failing, and it's not because of anything else. It's because you're figuring out what you're going to be passionate about, and you're trying to figure out that right niche for yourself.
Exactly. And also, too, it's a matter of vision. Like, I know when I got into my side of it, production, there were so many things in departments I had no idea about. Now I was very green when I came in. But I think it's the same way. And look how fast things change. How do you know what you're going to be passionate about if everything goes topsy-turvy in 2 to 3 years?
Right.
And it may very well. I think that's very important advice. Just getting in the game. Don't sit on the sidelines. Get in the game. Find out what grabs you. Find out where it takes you. And I'm a big believer of that as well. I think you're going to, personally, I've had 4 different careers and what I call lives, in my lifetime. It's really easy to see when you're young and how that was different than now. But, marketplace and technology have dictated a lot of what I do and which direction I go.
Of course.
And now I'm doing this, which is an entirely different thing that I did from the last 20 years. It has elements that I take my knowledge base from, but do this, and I think that's the thing you have to do.
The thing you've always been great at from the time I've known you is cultivating a community. You understand the community that you work in. You network within that community, and you provide opportunities for anyone who wants to come into the community and those people who are in the community to try to maximize it, right? Which you're great at.
Absolutely.
And if you look back on this and you see where you're at today, you're brilliant. I mean, what you have done with this network concept of being able to say, and I think that there are several flavors of content distribution today. None of them work.
Interesting.
None of them work.
Let's hear about
that.
But
the one that has the greatest opportunity for success is the one that's niche. The one that is focused on a community because you have the ability to understand your audience and deliver relevancy to them. The thing we all have experienced over the last 20, 30 years is this transformation of the set-top box and the broadcast. And everyone's been talking about the death of broadcast for years.
Sure.
Well, it's a dumb screen on the wall.
Right.
With a remote control in your hand, multiple channels. There's a directory now, fortunately. We don't have to just sit there and click.
Right.
But the directory is still based off of the program that's on that channel.
Yes.
And the channel has created some level of brand recognition for a specific audience, whether it be conservative or liberal, whether it be, funny or religious, whether it be, there are flavors.
Yes.
Right? That individuals become drawn to.
Right.
But that no longer means that that is my channel.
Yes.
People go to attract to a particular show, right? Well, as we continue to evolve the form of distribution, right, where we now can deliver content over IP, over the internet, that thing on the wall is only going to get dumber. It's not going to get smarter.
Right.
Why? Because of this, right?
Yeah.
So this thing here now has everything it knows about me, my personal preferences, what I want. And today, it's the niche channels of distribution that are most relevant.
Right.
You have created a channel and a network here specific to your community of content creators, your community of production-minded individuals, who are the backbone and the DNA of what it means to produce content in this era, right? Of content creation distribution. The ability for you to be able to produce that content and distribute it into the niche audience happens as a result of you being on a platform that's not owned by you,
right?
i.e. Facebook,
Yes.
right? And the live distribution channel that is this with no cost other than the people in this room,
right?
all the lighting, the physical, the air conditioning, otherwise we'd be sweating like crazy.
Yep.
All those things that have a cost, but for distribution at this level with the potential reach,
unheard of in
never
our
had
lifetime.
it before.
Yeah.
But your expectation, because you're focusing on a niche audience, is that it's only going to go to the audience for which you have built.
Right.
Right? You know what that audience is, you've defined that audience, and you hope that every show that audience can grow just a little bit. That doesn't exist in broadcast.
Yeah. Yes. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. And this is two-way. Now, I don't know if we have any notes or questions or anything out there. Maybe not. I haven't asked for any, but please ask questions too.
Sure.
Let me say that. And here's the part of the old broadcast world. It's usually about this time in the show where I remember, oh yeah, people can ask questions.
Well, we're just having too much fun.
Exactly. But it's that very thing, Pete. And let me ask you, with that, what scares brands for doing the same thing? What are brands afraid of right now? I mean, and just say, like, taking this model of the network.
Yeah.
For me, I would think a brand, and I don't know, but let's call it just a bicycle company. I don't know, just a bicycle company.
Okay.
Why couldn't a bicycle company start a network like this? I mean, we certainly have here, so the cost of entry is very low.
Yep.
I'm going to assume that same company has lots of video assets that are sitting in the vault right now that were for one project or another.
Okay.
You know, not being repurposed. What stops them from saying, look, let's take one of our top salesmen, let's take our marketing guy, let's do an hour a day of a show like this and put it out and then chop it up and put it on all our other social media assets? What stops them?
Well, let's assume for a second that they have the wherewithal to be able to do that, right? They have the confidence and the ability to be able to produce content.
Okay.
Which I think most modern entrepreneurs have a bit of a swagger and the ability to say, well, I know how my phone works, so I can do a live video stream, right? So let's go with that. I think the thing that they probably fear, and it's actually funny. It's the thing that oftentimes gets in the way as an entrepreneur of us in analysis paralysis.
Yes.
That analysis paralysis of what should I do and what shouldn't I do. I don't want to make a bad impression.
Right.
And you know, we've talked about this. Sometimes you just have to jump in.
Yeah.
Make mistakes and figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing I talked about with real. It's the L at the end of real is learning. Right? Learn and go back and apply it differently.
Yeah.
If you've done a good job of telling your story and making yourself relatable, your audience will understand. They'll give you the feedback because they want you to succeed.
Absolutely.
The fear is actually not in the community. The fear is in your peers. It's that bicycle shop down the street who may think differently of them or see what they do and see how the sausage is made and try to do something and one-up them. I think that's pretty common. Now we're talking small business in that regard.
Right.
But I think in a lot of cases, medium and large-sized brands have some of the same fears of not wanting to do something. Bigger brands and the bigger businesses have legal issues obviously involved. But I also don't think they understand the true opportunity.
I think that is probably the biggest truth, is they don't understand the true opportunity, you know, and the regular fears that you or I felt. You know, the first time I did this show, you know, and we got out of the radio show and I did this show, you know, I was pretty big on it until the hour before that show. And then it's like, oh my God, what did I get myself into now? But you know what? Just like you came on here, you know what I mean? It's pretty natural. You're talking to somebody, you know the subject matter, you're passionate about it. It's simple.
It's a conversation.
It's a conversation. It's a conversation.
If you as a business or a brand are able to provide value to somebody else through any mechanism, whether it be a live stream, whether it be video content, whether it be a blog post of some sort, put it out there.
Yeah.
Get it out there because that is the way in which you promote yourself. It's the same as going to a dinner party and having a conversation, introducing yourself to someone, and then trying to find a way to have a connection with you. And if you're kind of douchey and you're standoffish and you're kind of like, I'm not talking to you about stuff, you know, that's going to manifest itself in the brand.
Absolutely.
I don't think brands recognize that we're on the cusp of a complete transformation, and in the way in which content is distributed and engaged. And it's as big as if we're on the cusp of when televisions were first brought around. I mean, we're at that cusp. Even though it's highly fragmented today. That highly fragmented experience is about to begin to consolidate into a framework of distribution where individuals customers, users, will be able to control the level of personalization, the way in which they want to be contacted, and then through that mechanism, a brand will have accessibility and distribution to be able to get it out there in the space. We're seeing a level of personalization start in the big players, the Netflixes of the world.
Right.
And we really don't talk about Amazon because Amazon is closer to that of a network, even though it's delivering your content through the internet. But the way in which they've architected their business is very much in a linear a channel-based mechanism, right? Where I'm purchasing content, it's upper entertainment, high value, and only what you pay for. Why? Because Amazon's in the business of making marketplaces, where YouTube and Facebook is about community and accessibility and distribution. But as those channels continue to mature, and it all comes down to the registration of an individual. Once that registration happens and I start to learn something about you, we have a distribution network opportunity. It's pretty significant. Now, that's not why brands aren't playing in the space. But that's why they don't understand the true opportunity. We have, and I'll try to create a parallel to connect this to you. Do you remember the movie Never Ending Story?
Sure.
Okay. So this...
I didn't rush to the movie theater to see it, I will tell you.
Very few people
did.
did.
That wasn't too happy.
Very few people did. And those of you who know this movie, you either love it or you hate it.
You're right.
It's that creepy dog that flies around.
I like the creepy dog.
And most people like the creepy dog. And some people have an affinity to that character. There are other characters, and if you're following along, go ahead and send a message in your favorite character.
Your favorite creepy character,
in this movie. But the idea of the never-ending story, I believe, is in a lot of ways parallel to where we're at today and where the opportunities exist for a brand. You have a young boy sitting down, starts to read the first chapter of the book.
Okay.
The first chapter is the same for everybody, right? Gives you a little bit of an intro into the brand, into the storyline, understanding the world in which they live in and their point of view, okay? But as the little boy starts to read, as we start to engage with the audience, we start to see ourselves in the story. We start to have likes and dislikes of the characters. I like this creepy dog, or I don't like this creepy dog. Our actions that we have starts to manifest out in the story, and we start to see the path of the story take shape, right? And suddenly a battle in the 4th chapter of this book will determine the 5th chapter. Well, it's no different than where we're at today, where I engage with a brand, maybe I buy a product from the brand, and I leave a negative review. When I leave that negative review, a brand has the option now to engage with me in a different way, to change the outcome in some unique way. This is all happening fragmented, and there's tools that are spinning up to be able to manage this review over here. There's tools that are being managed to set up to manage a YouTube, comment stream, or a YouTube distribution channel, or Facebook over here. All of these different chapters in the brand's customer journey. The way in which we are headed is enabling us to change the beginning, middle, or an end of a story in the eyes of a consumer or a customer. It's really exciting stuff.
Yes.
But that's, again, looking around the corner of where we're headed. Today, we're dealing with this very fragmented world, many channels, and having to be authentic in each one of those channels. And the worst thing that we see happening today is where you have a brand on a channel that they don't belong on. And that's where everyone gets all the flack that happens.
And really, it's about that idea that I don't think anybody says, is they need a manager for that. Just you describing that right there, the fragmentation of it, and it's all coming up. I just keep going back to that marketing manager in a company, and here this is coming at them all the time. And their higher-ups are asking them, hey, how do we implement this? How do we do that? I don't know what I would tell them. Even being on my level, certainly you're the expert, but I have no idea what I would do in that situation. I can come up with individual things, but they need somebody who comes in just like yourself and can really manage that new material, There's
got to be a filter in place to be able to put boundaries in place for the internal staff. Because I see this all the time where you've got an internal marketing manager who is exceptionally talented, exceptionally bright, very capable person with way too many things on their plate.
Yeah.
You've got the 3 or 4 product managers who know their product inside and out, who have a very specific point of view of how that product should be marketed. You've got the salesperson or the sales team who most definitely has an interest in seeing marketing created to generate the emotion, to shorten the sales cycle for them, right? And then you've got the board of directors who all believe that they have the answer for how marketing needs to be done within the organization. And they're floating, at the 30,000 or 15,000 foot view, and they sit on tons of other boards, and they've got a specific point of view on what should happen. But if that central point person, whether it be the CMO, the CIO, and those 2 roles continue to change and their responsibilities, or slightly a little lower down with the director level or a marketing manager, they need a ground rule. They need to be able to say, this is our sandbox, this is our point of view, this is how we are real. These are the channels that make sense to us. And if we have a new idea or we have something we want to explore, these are the filters that we are looking through as to whether or not that's a valid use of our time and effort.
Yeah.
And I think that when we started the company and we were working in on YouTube channels or creating brand destinations or creating social campaigns, oftentimes we were doing them in silos and backing into a brand and saying why it was relevant for the brand. And now we're flipping that more than ever before and saying, what is the anchor of the brand? And then what makes sense for that brand on that channel?
What silo does that go into?
Don't just say we have to be on Facebook. Don't just say we have to be on Twitter. Don't just say we have to be on Instagram. I mean, I had this conversation last week with somebody. It was like, we want to do a large influencer program on Instagram. And the first question you say is, why? Why Instagram? And and it was, we want to use celebrities. And you understand, you start asking questions of why. And it's not because it's rooted or based in any sort of data. There isn't a following today. There's no case study that proves that that's the right mechanism. And they're not even producing quality content elsewhere to say that we've crossed off on all the other things that need to happen.
They haven't done the homework yet.
Correct. But the biggest opportunity I see in that regard is what's happening right now in the parallel to consumer electronics. Consumer electronics category has always been the ones who have been focused on needing to tell the right story to the right person in the funnel process. Very early on to make sure that product gets out to the right person. Middle funnel, the speeds and feeds, the features and the benefits, right? How to, unboxing, et cetera. And then hoping to help sell and close that, which is everything from point of sale or advertising at the buy now sort of component on Amazon or Best Buy or wherever the case might be. But because of consumer electronics being connected, the interface will continue to change. The product will continue to evolve. How that product continues to connect to other products in your life will continue to change. And so the ongoing relationship with that company, that manufacturer, is paramount and important. And I don't think that most brands have taken a step back to recognize that the relationship of the customer from very beginning to post-sale is in their purview. We're so focused on the sale and the funnel, but the funnel is obliterated now.
And almost it goes back to an economics, a financial thing. Every big corporation now is interested in this quarter. Every quarter has to live on its own. I think it's a real detriment to the product and the company, but that's a separate subject. We're not into. But I want to touch on something because I know this is just a huge passion of yours, and it's something that I struggle a little bit to understand myself. The concept is very simple, but I think getting into the ramifications are really big. The Internet of Things, and I know you're very versed on that. You've shared with me some information that blew me away in that category. Talk to me about the Internet of Things. Just give me a brief description of it.
Well, there's a lot of different definitions
Okay.
of the Internet of Things, and it really depends on where you're at in the ecosystem. Ecocycle is a client of ours.
I like the name, Ecocycle.
From Coca-Cola.
Okay.
It depends on where you're at as to where your point of view is. But simply put, it's the dumb devices in our life, or the dumb physical objects, the chairs, the desks, the things that were usually just manufactured and set up to go, the sprinkler system, et cetera, that now has some level of connectivity to either another device or to the internet, and that the data is flowing back and forth. Now, what you do with that data and how they communicate, what conversations they enable, is really where the flavors of the definition come into play.
Okay.
We have some clients that are on the manufacturing side of things, and their definition of Internet of Things is going to be really about what it enables them to do. Meaning, my dishwasher is showing signals of potential wear.
Okay.
And it's communicating back to the manufacturer in advance of it breaking.
Okay.
And the manufacturer now is able to reduce call volume and be proactive and create a great customer experience.
Right.
Right?
Right.
To them, that's the Internet of Things. Now, to the customer, they're looking at it saying, is there value in that for me?
Sure.
Right? Well, if I know about that use case, yes. But the way in which we hear the Internet of Things today is a lot of times, oh, I'm going to run out of orange juice and my fridge orders it for me.
That's exactly what I think. That's exactly what I think.
And honestly, yes, that's a use case, but that's not what the Internet of Things is all about. From my perspective, it's the ability to collect information and make it useful, both for the user and for the relationship with the user and the manufacturer. What's interesting to me about the Internet of Things, and I can talk forever about this.
I know.
And likely
go
will.
ahead.
And likely will. What's interesting about this whole marketplace is that, or the Internet of Things, the Internet of Everything, and the connectivity of it all, it's an industrial revolution for our generation. Yeah. And the amount of information that comes off of these devices.
I got it. It's the industrial revolution for our generation.
Correct.
So just like it occurred 110, 120 years ago in real time for the country, this is this time, 2017 and ongoing, this is what's happening.
We have seen the beginning of the Internet of Things, and I'm not so sure that it's the term that I really love.
I've got you.
But it is the term that people are using. But we've seen the beginning, it's early adopters, and we're seeing it just simply in the context of, can I turn my lights on from my phone?
Right.
Can I control my Nest thermostat?
Right.
The most basic components of it. It's the do-it-yourself early adopters.
Yeah.
We haven't even scratched the surface as to what I believe the true value of that will be. It's the ability for my ride home and the information regarding my ride home from my car to be communicated to something, such as maybe my insurance carrier.
Okay.
And my insurance carrier to know the usage and the behaviors and my driving patterns. And the benefit to me as a user, as a driver, is that I'm paying for a lower rate because I'm not, my driving patterns are safer, I have less accidents, I'm not driving this car as much as my neighbor, who is paying a higher premium because he's driving more. Right. These are economic shifts in the way in which business models are currently being run in a way that we've never seen before.
Yeah.
Incredibly disruptive.
Yeah.
Great, exciting opportunities, all based on data.
Yeah.
And so I see a direct correlation between data and the Internet of Things. The data is the new oil. I think there's an opportunity there to harness it and shape it. Now, as a marketer and as a content creator, which is what we're here talking about, I believe that has a tremendous impact on where we're going. Think about this. We could create multiple versions of this show, right? Or while we're producing this show, transcripts are being created real time.
Right.
the various different topics that we're talking about are being tagged.
Right.
And you're only distributing content to those people who are interested in relevancy, in the relevant topics we're talking about.
Yes.
It's changing the beginning, middle, or an ending.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Or it's appending an advertiser or sponsor to that content in a unique way. It's making it accessible. That's just a simple example of the content side of the data that could come from this type of experience. Now, when I'm talking about the personalization of my home or my business, the amount of data that's coming off of there enables so many different use cases that we haven't even thought of today. What's interesting is that I think the pushback most people have today, or people being users, customers, is, I don't want that data out there. That's, it's intrusive, it's creepy, all those things. And yes,
I don't want to get any more emails. I don't want to get any more phone calls. I don't want to be bothered.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what we're doing today is we unsubscribe to an email when we're not interested. But you don't unsubscribe to every email.
Right.
Because there are certain brands you love.
Love being the key word.
Right?
Yes.
So when you love a brand, when you find that you're relating to a brand, they're doing something that's providing you value, you're becoming an advocate for it, and you're wanting to promote it further. You're wanting to get involved in some way. I think there's a direct correlation to data and personalization there. Because if you're providing me value, I'm going to give you access to information if I trust you.
Right.
If I don't trust you, I'm not going to give you that information. Right. This has happened. So that level of control, right? Of how much control do I want or need, is coming. Today, back to the fragmentation. It's very fragmented, right? I unfollow somebody on Instagram.
Right.
I unsubscribe to something from an email. We all have those friends on Facebook that go extremely political, and we hesitate to unfollow them because we don't want to piss them off, but at the same time, it's like, no, I can't deal with this anymore,
take it
right?
Anymore.
It's like, it's, and that's, a lot of people have turned off of Facebook as a result of that.
Right.
But we have these triggers. The new Google Pixel phone came out, right? Which I love. That's what this is.
Okay.
And Google has a feature built in that says suspected spam caller, and my whole screen turns red.
Wow.
Right? And so now you no longer go.
It just identifies the number that other people have reported?
Because other people have reported it. And it asks me to validate whether that was a spam call or not, right? And so I'm part of a community demonstrating my unwillingness to partake in these spam calls. Right. This is all being filtered up to a centralized system where I say, I would be happy to be able to do this, but this isn't on my phone. I'd be happy to be able to tell you those brands and those businesses that I want to be allowed into my life. Because I love them. But that doesn't exist today. It will. We'll find a way to do that. Who owns that is really interesting. Comcast at CES, and it's if you go to PeteDeutschman.com, you'll see I actually wrote a post about this. Comcast launched a interface that allows those who have the Comcast Xfinity network in their house to be able to control access on a device level in your home. So what that means is if I have a 13-year-old boy who seems to disappear into his bedroom after dinner, and I'm thinking that's probably not a good idea, right? I can go into my, why are you laughing? I can go into my interface.
I still am a 13-year-old boy, actually.
Too much information. So I can go into my interface on Comcast and set controls. Well, offices have been doing this forever, right? You block through firewalls and block access. Now I can do that on a local level. So I can control my son's device for time of day. Can't be on the internet after 7:15. Only be on the internet for an hour and 20 minutes unless you're getting straight A's and it's hour 45. All those things that I used to have to stand over, rip it out of their hand and say, we're done with this, you're not going to, you're not going to Johnny's house tomorrow, those sorts of things. Now, Xfinity is controlling all of that, and I have the ability to set that. What sites they can go to, what apps they can download, right? All of those things are now being able to be controlled through Xfinity's interface. And they're starting to understand the value of that. Now, is Xfinity charging extra for that today? No, it's part of their service. Why? Because they're creating value to their customer.
Value to the customer.
So go back to the question around Internet of Things and devices. As devices become smarter or connected, they go from dumb to connected. I would say that 9 out of 10 times when I talk to a customer who's got a manufactured device, they're not charging an incremental fee in the future for those connected devices. And it's not because there isn't an incremental cost, although it's nominal. It's primarily because there's so much value in the data and the information that's coming back to the manufacturer about product usage, reducing call volume, all the other things, that it's helping them optimize and stay competitive against everybody else and staying up to date. So what you do with that data as a manufacturer, how you bring it to the brand to communicate with your target audience, and understanding and listening to your audience as to whether or not they're actually digging what you're doing is key and fundamental to every aspect of marketing in the future. And I am so excited for the Internet of Things and the idea that those things in our lives will be connected, that there's an ecosystem today, right, that will be going away. We as customers no longer go out and buy a product because it only is on Apple and my house is an Apple home. We now have Alexa and Apple side by side with each other. And I have an expectation that that device that I just bought, that dishwasher, whatever it is just going to connect and work.
Yes. You don't have to worry about it being a type or something, or a back-end deal with the two companies that have done it.
And it's going to connect with this, and it's going to work with this, and I can talk to Alexa or I can talk to my Google Home, and it's going to work. And engineering-wise, there's new products coming out every single day. How is that manufacturer going to stay up to date and up to speed with all the things they need to work with? It's going to be impossible for them to do. So I think there's a huge opportunity to harness data for the Internet of Things. I think there's a huge, exciting plethora of new things that are coming for us as users and consumers. And that's going to create a new wave of opportunity for content creators. New distribution channels, new screens to be on. We have to think differently. Today we're thinking about visual video in a linear form. I think there's going to be opportunities now to have personalized distribution of content. As a result of the fact that manufacturers or ecosystems will know what things I have in my home and my behaviors, that information will inform content distribution. And are we doing this next year? No. But this is where we're headed, and why I'm really excited about the future of our industry. It's just going to be different, just like it has changed every year since.
That's right. That's right. Well, Pete, this has been probably one of my most enlightening shows. I've
enjoyed it.
Me too. It's been a lot of fun.
I think I'm going to do a show.
Yeah, you know what? I know you're going to do a show.
Will you be on my show?
Yeah, I'll be on your show every day if you have me.
Okay, good.
All right, very good. Hey, listen, how do people get a hold of Pete Deutschman and the Buddy Group?
So obviously thebuddygroup.com. You can go there and check it out. Follow me on Twitter, my buddy Pete D. It's a good way to do it. And then personally, PeteDeutschman.com. I publish blog posts, quite frequently on various different topics. A lot on the connected consumer, marketing insights and data that may be helpful for buddies. All sorts.
And through LinkedIn too, I know.
Of course.
I always intersect you on LinkedIn.
Always on
That's
LinkedIn.
where I'm always liking your posts and everything like that.
Absolutely, I appreciate that.
That's great. Pete, awesome,
Absolutely,
buddy. Awesome.
Congrats.
Glad we did it. Thank you, sir. Congrats to you too, everything you got going on. So that's it today. Burnie's Applebox, Pete Deutschman. We had a great show, so please join us next week, and we will see you soon. Thanks a lot.
Cut. That's a wrap.